Hello.
Hello.
I remember to unmute. It's like I'm a teenager. I'm so good with technology.
Yeah. Hello. I'm trying to get everybody in. We have a full house tonight. I need the microphone, guys. You got to hear. Unmute.
I am unmuted. Can you hear me now?
How is it? Okay, I am going to try to pronounce everyone's name tonight because, as Ron will tell you, and thank you for joining me, Ron.
My pleasure.
I am horrible with names, at least the last name. So, Anthony Alamonto.
That's it.
Okay. Matt Davenport. Adam Gaffin. Okay.
Right.
Troy Young. Ron La.
Lar rhymes with car.
You said La last time.
No, I said lar rhymes with car. The
Lar.
AH is an ah. That shouldn't surprise people because
Yeah.
AH is ah. Anyway, that's what I said.
We're not on yet, guys. So
It's like the Cowardly Lion, right?
It is. He changed his name to
Yep.
Lar, though.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. My family's from Lar, Germany.
all righty. And there we go. All righty, guys. Does anyone have any special thing any special topic or anything you'd like me to touch on? I don't usually do this, but I did have an author that wrote me after the show, emailed me, and wanted to know if I could actually touch on some historical writing. So I said, why not? We can go there and we can find out what appeals out of historical writing. So anyone who has passed on that you love, that's an author, that's what we're going to discuss. Okay. And anyone and everyone, please jump in, ask questions, talk. Let's have fun.
How long are these normally? Just to
Usually an hour.
okay, because I could fill that entire hour, so I don't want to
Okay.
trample on everybody else.
No,
right?
actually, if it extends longer, Ron will tell you, I'll keep it rolling. If it's fun and we're having a ball, hey,
I hope you got lots of tape, cause
I got tons of tape.
all right, we're going for this.
All right, everyone.
What's the record?
3 days.
An hour and a half, I believe.
Hour and a half.
Don't
I think it was an hour and a half.
New record.
don't tempt her, Ron.
He must have disconnected. I kept going for 3 days.
There you go.
3 days?
Yeah.
All right. I might pass out sleeping for a little bit, not off, but that's all right. It's all right. I can edit where need be. Okay. All right, gentlemen. We all ready?
Yes.
Fluff your hair, fix whatever you got fixed.
Not much there to fix. But okay.
All righty.
You do that thing, Troy.
In 1, 2, 3. Hello, everyone. I am Opus Knight, and we have entered Night Vision. Tonight, we have Anthony Alamada and Matt Davenport, Adam Gaffin, Troy Young, and Ron Lear. Lar.
I was gonna just make up
damn
another
it.
name.
Lar.
It's like Ron Smith, but you messed up my real name. So Ron Lar.
You Lala.
Yeah, rhymes with
Now-
car. I collect cars. If so it rhymes with what I collect. Car.
Oh, see, now why didn't you say that before we started taping?
I don't know.
Lar. Is that right? Is that correct?
Ron Lar, yes.
Car Lar. See, you could have done. See, you do this stuff to me. You test me. I know.
I'm a rascal.
Now, gentlemen, I'm going to go down the line and I'm going to see if everyone remembered to bring their book.
God no. I can run up and get it though.
Okay. We'll start with Anthony. How about you, love?
Yeah, sure. Hold on.
How about you, Matt?
you go. I got it. Oh, sorry. I don't know what I'm doing here. It's not working because of the picture. There we go.
Just
That's the
yeah,
best I
pull
can
back.
do. Yeah, it's not working. That's the
It
best I
is.
can do.
And just keep it still.
Actually, this is one of my not for resale versions, so it's not working.
Gotcha. Tell us the name, love.
Free Worlds of Humanity. It's a science fiction book.
Alrighty. And you're actually new to the show.
I am, and I tried to, warn someone ahead of time that I had, as far as other books go and whatnot, I've never read a book in my life, and I wrote a book, so I'm gonna do the best I can and pitch in where I can.
Hey, good for you. Good for you. Would you like to read the blurb at the back?
Sure, why not? Well, actually, I can't because it's cut off on here. This is this ain't gonna work. Oh man,
That's okay. Tell us about it.
it's a book. It's round. Sorry, square. Yeah, it's got the. I'm just kidding. No, Free Worlds of Humanity. I started writing this book about 20 years ago. Actually, when I was a young kid, I wanted to make it into a video game at first, and that didn't really pan out. So I put it in a box, didn't touch it for 15 years. And then I decided I was cleaning the house one day and I found it. And my wife said, what the hell are you doing with all this? It's 300-400 pages of crap. And I said, well, it was going to be a video game. And she said, well, you got to do something with it. So I said, well, why don't I make a book? And she looked at me like I was crazy because I'd never read a book in my life. So, I said, well, I'll give it a shot. Let's do it and see what happens. And it took about 4 years, but I put it all together. So it's science fiction. It's based in the distant future where humanity had spread amongst the stars and then lost technology. I know that's a theme with a lot of other stories, but what makes it a little interesting is that out of all these societies, they lost technology at the exact same time, and none of them know why it happened and what occurred. And after that had happened, only a few of them came out from this time of what's called the Great Darkness, and those societies that came out became the Free Worlds of Humanity. There's 5 societies in total, so I follow one main character from each of those societies, and there's a flashpoint where all these 5 societies are coming together to a massive battle with each other, and basically these characters walk all stems of life. One's a leader, one's a rebel, one's someone who's poor. I go through all the different castes of society and with these characters, so they all meet one spectrum of it, and at some point they all intertwine with each other, and each one of them plays a vital role in the future and what happens, and that's pretty much it.
Awesome. Love it. Adam, how are you here?
Hey, good. How are you?
Good. Tell us about your lovely book.
All right. So this is, I will shut off the background. It is Triumph's Ashes. It is the 5th book in the classical. It's too late here. Really too late. It's the 5th book in the Cassidy Chronicles.
Okay.
It is the conclusion to the Artemis War story arc, and there it is.
Very
and this
nice.
is one of the brand new hardcovers that Amazon is now doing. So they just arrived today.
Awesome.
Excellent.
Yeah.
How's the quality on the hard?
I can actually, it feels really good. It feels really good. And the interior is good. I went for a slightly larger. I went for 7x10, and it's nice. It's a good size, good weight. It feels like a proper book. And I actually can read the blurb on the back. I have the stripe, but I know what it says. So I'll hold up the cover so people can see it. So, Viva la Revolucion. The Primus, Vasilia Newling, is facing her worst nightmare, a revolution on Luna. Titan and the asteroids abandoning the Solarian Union, defections from within her own government, all because of those damned Cassidys, but she's still as ruthless as ever. And if Ayanna and Kendra thought she was playing dirty before, they're going to see how filthy she can get. There isn't enough room for both the Terran Federation and the Union. This time, one is going down for good. Return to the Future for the 5th installment of the Cassidy Chronicles.
Very nice. Matt,
Howdy.
hi.
Matt Davenport. I actually have the third book in the Andrew Doran series, Andrew Doran and the Scroll of Nightmares. Andrew Doran is kind of an Indiana Jones style character who fights a lot of Lovecraftian and Lovecraft direct steals monsters. And the back blurb states, Andrew Doran, celebrated archaeologist and wisecracking warrior against enemies beyond human imagination, faces his greatest challenge. This time, the fate of the world is at stake. Doran's colleague, Nancy Dyer, has located the Book of Ibon. Its vast power is a magnet for foes from all over the world. Miskatonic University soon finds itself besieged by dark forces whose victory would mean the end of the earth as we know it. Join Doran and Dyer for another exhilarating adventure battling monsters with magic, machine guns, and Doran's own brand of panache. So,
Beautiful.
book number 3 comes out October 19th.
Love how
it.
that sounds, Matt.
Oh, thank you.
That sounds fantastic. And Anthony, I love your background.
Oh yeah, it's from the book. That's the main cylinder.
I was kind of hoping it was.
I actually went a little overboard with that, and I worked with several artists, and I've got like a couple hundred pictures actually from, so a lot look like just like this.
Yeah, that is an awesome background.
Appreciate that.
This is
Thank
not
you.
a book, just so you know. This is my lovely office. Troy,
Hey,
hey.
that's not my book either, but there's a lot of books back there. I'm hiding in my parents' basement because I've got nothing else to do. No, that's not my parents' basement. Although they do live upstairs in my house. It is my house, not their house. They live upstairs. Anyway, I digress. You didn't need to know that. But hey, I'm wearing my Wild Cthulhu shirt. See, a Wild Cthulhu appears. Well, you're not the only Lovecraftian-based author here, Matt, because here is my book.
I literally just bought that.
You did?
Yes, I did.
Awesome. It was 99 cents today.
And that's why I bought it.
Good.
That was my selling point. That and Cthulhu.
Well,
I've seen that on Facebook
this-
a lot. I've seen that pop up a lot.
Oh, I've been spending a lot of money, but hey, you know what? It's turning a profit for me. So I got the first two, and the reason I wanted to come on here today is because the third one just came out. So the third one came out on the 25th in ebook form. I had a little problem with the cover for the paperback, so it got uploaded today. I'm just waiting for Amazon to do their thing to say it's there, but this one's on sale for 99 cents. This one in everywhere but the United States apparently is on sale for $1.99. In the US, it's still at $4.99 because I tried to do a Kindle countdown and then it screwed up and then I canceled it and now they won't let me change the price. So hopefully they'll do that. If not, I hope you like the first one enough that you're willing to pay $4.99 for that one. If you're in the US, if you're in Canada, UK, or Australia, you're getting it cheaper. So this is my Lovecraftian stories. It is 3 books. They're short stories, but they're linked and they're meant to be read in order because they build off the other to tell ultimately an entire story. Now I'll read the back matter here. Although the back matter here isn't as good as my current blurb on the website because I didn't want to go back and change the cover, but the blurb on the website is actually better than this, but I'll read it anyway if I can see in this darkened room with my terrible eyesight. Sucks getting old. There's that very famous line in Lovecraft's weird language about Cthulhu, Fatagan, Gnagan, Rely, blah, 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 blah. I don't know how to say it. I don't think anybody knows how to say it. Cthulhu, Fatagan. In his house at Relay, dead Cthulhu waits dreaming. What happens to humanity when Cthulhu's dreams come to an end. The Cthulhu mythos has touched and mutated humanity for ages, but in recent times, mythos-related activity has been on the rise. Why? What mysterious forces are causing an increase in these encounters, and what ultimately will be humanity's fate? Governments around the globe are working in secret to uncover and unravel the taint of cosmic horror that infects the planet. 3 investigators employed by a shadowy government agency encounter entities fueled by the malevolent energy of something known as the Other. As they peel back the layers obscuring the unknown horrors that inhabit the vast universe, the investigators enter a futile struggle against inhumanity, insanity, and despair. And this collection of linked stories brings the reader into a modern take on the world of H.P. Lovecraft's Cthulhu mythos. The one thing that stands apart about this, I'm a Canadian, I live here in Toronto, and the majority of my stories are actually set in Canada. There's not too many Lovecraftian horror set in Canada. So if you're a Canadian, want to learn more about Canada, whatever, looking for something different, like Lovecraft, give it a shot.
Very
See,
nice.
that actually makes me even more excited for it because I grew up on the border of Canada. I've been to Toronto. Museum of Civilization is one of my favorite places to go.
Yeah.
So I'm really stoked now that I got some stories kind of close to my old stomping ground.
Well, you know what? Before I cut off Ron, who's just waiting for his chance to go, if I may, Ron, do you mind if I? Ron's
hiding.
Not at all.
I'm going to tell you a little story about the very first story I wrote, because it was literally the second thing I published. The first thing I published was a 4-page little short story that I just threw together just to actually see how the process worked, right? Like what you had to do to put something up on Amazon. But this was the first real thing I published, and it was only meant to be a one-off short story. And it actually was based on an event in my own youth. Now, my parents are from Cape Breton Island. We were traveling to Cape Breton Island when I was about 6, right? And we're driving across the island to get to where my grandparents live. And you only get one radio station down there. So we're listening to this one radio station in the car. And every 15 minutes, they had this update that this unknown sea monster had been washed ashore. And I kept imagining at age 6, like Godzilla is coming over a hill and going to grab our car. Well, it turned out it was just a basking shark, right? They found out a couple of days later, it was just highly decomposed and bigger than these things normally are. And I was out walking my dog one night, literally, and it was just, I remembered that little tidbit from my youth, and I thought, what if it wasn't a basking shark? What if it was real? And I had read Lovecraft years ago. I hadn't read Lovecraft probably in about 10 years. And I thought, boy, he had, a lot of nautical themes to it. So the only thing that actually ties that first story to Lovecraft is I made a passing reference to Miskatonic University, right? Because I used to play Call of Cthulhu, the role-playing game. That's what got me into reading Lovecraft, was that role-playing game. So I put that passing reference into Miskatonic University just to tie it into his world. And holy crap, people actually liked the story and said, you should write more. And I'm like, okay. Next thing you know, it's an 18-story arc that just finished up. And I've been really enthused about it. Now, having said that, I'm going to be launching this all as a big omnibus, because there's 2 there, another one just the same size, probably in December. And I'm going to start launching each individual story as an audiobook, because everybody keeps going, when's the audiobook coming? And I'm going back, and because it's my first stuff, and because I've been writing nonstop for the last 2 years, my writing has gotten a lot better. And I'm going back and I'm like, there's definitely some phraseology that I would change here. I think I overused the word got, and stuff like that. So Matt, keep that in mind, that was my very first attempt. And there's going to be a brushed up version that gets released in that omnibus this December, but it still holds true. I've got a lot of good, solid fans. A lot of people engage with me, and I'm quite happy that this thing that came to me in the middle of the night while walking my dog, before I even knew I wanted to be an author, has proven to be as successful as it is. So that's all I have to say.
Congratulations. And I'm telling you, we've all had those first wrestlings with Amazon. So I completely understand, and I will not be judging anything.
Hey, you know what? Amazon's been great. I mean, I can't begrudge them at all. Anytime I've had a problem, other than the fact that I, tried to do an international book pub that got screwed up and I ended up paying for it and not getting it. By the way, I've got another international book pub on this coming on the 2nd of October, which is why I discounted everything. But other than that, I've found them to be very receptive and very quick to deal with any issues. So I know a lot of other authors have said they've had problems, knock on wood so far, if there's wood around me. I haven't had any, so.
Well, Amazon, if you're watching, anyone from Amazon, you have.
I'm a big fan.
You have fans. We love Amazon.
Yeah.
Ron, you ducked down on us. Now you know I'm gonna call you on it.
I don't know what happened. My video froze and I stopped it and restarted and it wouldn't restart. Then I started crying. It was a mess. So I just got it. But my name's Ron Law. I write fantasy, science fiction, humor. Although the fantasy and science fiction has a lot of humor in it too. In a couple weeks, the 3rd book of my fantasy trilogy comes out on the 18th. On the 11th, I have a humorous book called You're as Stupid as You Are Fat, How to Talk to Women. It's a self-help book. And
I get that book.
So I hope you will. It is so seriously helpful, and not at all offensive. But I don't have any physical copies of my book because I just do ebooks. I mean, at my house, I don't really buy physical books anymore. But I will read the blurb from the first book of the Cassidy Chronicles, which is my fantasy trilogy. A thief with dreams of adventure, an eternal battle against the gods, free drinks and grateful women. Dirk's a scoundrel, some would say a jerk. He'll admit it, but his ambition only goes as far as his next heist. Excuse me. It's not that he's against noble causes or grand adventures. To hear him tell it, he's had a few, as long as there's something in it for him. But when a childhood friend shows up with an unbelievable tale, Dirk must decide if he really is up for adventure worthy of the songs of bards. The last time the Cassidy battled the gods, they nearly destroyed the world. Can Dirk and his companions prevent the world from sliding into chaos once more? If women and treasure await, he's going to give it his best shot. So that's the first book of the Cassidy Chronicles. Its title is Children of Cassidy. And then later this year, I have a humorous science fiction novel coming out called You Get What You Steal. So all my stuff is about thieves. I don't know why, but it is.
I can't wait to read that one. You get what you steal. I love that. So tonight's topic, I would like each one of you to tell me throughout history, who is your favorite author? And have you found yourself in a position where, how do I put it? Any takeaways like resemblance to their writing that you have found kind of sneaks in? Because from what I understand, out of the authors that I have spoken with, there's always a little tiny tidbit that sneaks in. And I just want to know if any of you have noticed any kind of thing recently in any of your writings. Ron?
Well, I guess I'm not particularly self-aware because I can't think of anything. And I mean, it's hard for me to even think of who my favorite author is, since it changes all the time. I mean, Dang. I feel like my writing is much more reflective of my personality than of somebody else's writing style.
Interesting. I like that. Troy?
Well, the very first thing I wrote was a novel I finally published last year, which I quickly unpublished. I was trying to get a agent for it, and I only published it to enter it into a contest, and it was called The Extraordinary Life of Jimmy Mayfield, and it's a, humorous coming of age story. And I think because it was the first thing I sat down to write, that style kind of stuck with me. All of my stuff is dialogue heavy. So even though my book that I had up here, there's Cthulhu, is based in Lovecraft's Cthulhu mythos, I write nothing like Lovecraft, right? It's action adventure. It's very modern. It's very dialogue heavy, whereas, his was all told after the fact in a third person with very little dialogue. So I would suggest the one book that kind of spoke to me and helped me craft my idea to write this Extraordinary Life of Jimmy Mayfield was a Confederacy of Dunces. Oh. So, John Kennedy Toole, I love that book. Ignatius Riley is just crazy over the top. I don't know why anybody puts up with it, but those weird, quirky characters and very dialogue heavy, I would suggest that book, influenced my first writing, which has kind of stuck with me through all the iterations, whether it's been horror, science fiction, fantasy, and now I'm writing a young adult novel. And whenever I run them through my pro writing aid to help me edit things down, it always compares me to other authors in the genres, and my dialogue is always way heavier than everybody. So that's my influence, I guess.
I got it. Anthony, since you have stated you've never read a book.
Never read a book.
I'm going to go there and challenge you to, what type of movie do you like? What out of any kind of historical movie, what would you choose? Or a time frame in history that you'd like to live?
I'm sorry, say that part again. I didn't hear you.
Or a time frame in history that you would have liked to have ventured through.
Well, I in my book, the way I attribute how I said how technology was lost, I do a little bit of like a steampunky kind of thing with it, where I like the Industrial Revolution. That's always been something I'm really big on. I just like that era in history, not for any real reason other than like I just feel like it was there was a mix of different time periods kind of all intertwining into one, depending on which where you go in that during those years. So that's for me, that's always been something. And I can say that, like, for writing and even though I've never read a book, I am a Tolkien fan. I am a George R.R. Martin fan. Yeah, even though I don't, I'm not a big book reader. I've never been. I do read Wikipedia a lot, and I can look at some. I can see based on what I see there and things of that nature. Yeah, thanks, Ron.
You're welcome.
So I do appreciate that, and I'm sorry that I've never actually read a book, and if like I said, if it wasn't for my wife, I wouldn't have even attempted this. But I had a lot of beta readers, I had an editor, and went through that whole process, so it worked out. But that's probably the best I can say on that.
No, good for the wife. What is her name?
Courtney.
Very nice. Tell Courtney thank you.
I will.
I have a question for Anthony.
Yes.
Shoot.
Since you've never read a book, do you consider all your readers suckers? Like look at those guys. They read a book. Losers.
Yeah.
Like nerds or something.
Yeah, I don't say I consider them suckers. I would say, I feel humbled by them because when some of them have, I had about 30 advanced readers who looked at it and they told me, listen, like you kept my attention, you did a really good job. Like they didn't have a lot of critiques, and I thought that was really cool. Like they said, like it was my writing style was very unique to them. They haven't read things that looked in that way, and to them it read more like almost like a movie script in some ways. Because they said it felt like they were watching a TV show the way they were reading it. So I thought that was pretty cool.
See, I could believe that. I could definitely believe that. That's awesome. Adam?
Nothing more infuriating though about beta readers who go, "Oh, it was great. Thank you. Why was it great? What was wrong? It can't be perfect. Tell me what was wrong and what not." Because if you don't, the very first person that leaves a review on Amazon will.
Yeah, well, I can definitely tell you that's why it took 4 years to write the first book, though. Each one of them ripped me to shreds. Like I felt I was crying at times, like it was so bad, and I was like, all right, I suck. Maybe I shouldn't do this. But no, it didn't work that way. But obviously, that helped me, and I appreciated those people for being brutally honest. And I was like, listen, I got thick skin. Just rip into me, like just go. Don't give up. Just do it.
Does that hold true for tonight?
Yeah, yes, please. You guys just just tell me how you feel.
Oh, great. I've already written some shit down.
Yeah, I have all these in the chat. I have a whole list of questions and comments. Okay, Adam. How about you?
So I would say especially the first book in the series was very strongly influenced by Robert Heinlein. I've read just about everything that Heinlein wrote. I did not make it through For Us the Living. That really should never have been published, which is why I was under trunk for 20 years after his death. Anyways, so the first book that I put out, the Cassidy Chronicles, there's a lot of homage to Heinlein, but one of the things that I like to do is I will do little hat tips and little Easter eggs for authors and films and TV shows that I have enjoyed. So there are Hitchhiker's Guide references in there. One of my main characters is hugely influenced by Star Trek. She just buys into the whole infinite diversity and infinite combinations ethos. There'll be a line here and a line there, which, just calls back to all these great stories growing up. Asimov's 3 Laws of Robotics, get mentioned in passing in there. And it's a lot of fun to do that, to make it flow and make it, be natural and make it be part of the book. At this point, this is what needs to be said because it has to be said. So the whole wink and a nod to the reader, I love doing that.
I always love that too. Matt?
Yeah, I actually started off my first 2 books were all based on trying to get the voice of some of my favorite authors. So there's a lot of Douglas Adams and Terry Pratchett in my first 2 books are kind of more a comedy, urban fantasy thing. But I mean, if I were going to go anywhere else, I'd say I'm all about the weird stuff, the stuff that makes you think. So Asimov was going to be my next. I mean, Adam already hit some of my favorites. Asimov was definitely the 3 Rules of Robotics. What was his name? Alamov or whatever, the robot detective. I loved all of those. And I still tried to carry a lot of that voice when I do anything science fiction, because I don't just write Lovecraft. But Lovecraft is the one you read to feel weird. So he's definitely become not only one of my favorites, but also the map. When you want a map of how to write a weird story, you go to Lovecraft. So I wouldn't say necessarily I try to copy the voice of Lovecraft, but I definitely try to copy some of the structure, even when I'm writing an adventure in the Lovecraft mythos or just a straight up horror like my Trials of Obed Marsh novel. It's definitely let's crank up the weird and then let's leave them weird at the end.
Very nice.
R. Daniel Olivaw.
Thank you.
Yep.
I love those
And-
books. I just
and
can't
his-
remember his name.
Yeah, R. Daniel, R. Giscard, and their human partner, Elijah Bailey.
Yes, I remember Elijah.
Yes.
And I never really
Yes.
read much classic sci-fi. I did write. I've got a small sci-fi series that's underway. It's 2 of 4 books have already been out, but I was more influenced by Star Wars, specifically The Mandalorian, and the video game Red Dead Redemption. And I
Oh
kind of
man, you're
took,
singing my songs.
well, hey man, you got to look up Seeker of Solace.
So my Star Wars influences were all the previous EU, the expanded universe before the new trilogy wiped that all out. So whenever
Yeah.
I do anything military, it's all the jargon I've learned from those old Star Wars books. And then yeah, I'm just obsessed with Red Dead.
Did you ever read any Warhammer?
No, I did not.
Specifically Gaunt's Ghosts.
Nope.
Go look that up. Dan
Okay.
Abnett is the author of that. And if you want military, they basically follow this one military unit as it goes through all the weirdness. Like Warhammer is basically like Cthulhu in fucking in space. Bleep that. And if you want military, he's done it better than anybody else I've ever read. So
I'll look them up. Thank you.
All right.
Oh, yeah,
So-
it's funny you brought up Star Wars. That's one that actually has not made it into any of my books. There's not a single Star Wars reference in there in any of them that I can recall putting in. If somebody picks one up, it's purely accidental.
well, I don't have any direct references to it. To me, it was just sitting there watching The Mandalorian with my family, and that's what gave me the catalyst to want to write my story, because it is a space western, and basically Lucas's first trilogy is either a space samurai story or a space western, right? And I so loved the very first Red Dead Redemption, John Marston's story, where he's hunting down his former gang members. So I took that element and put it into Seeker of Solace, this guy who's been just a bastard all his life, right? Tired of this life. He's gonna be up on the gallows. He's about to be put to death. And this frontier marshal shows up and says, I can give you a reprieve right now, or you can go back up on those gallows. But if I give you the reprieve, you're hunting down the rest of the gang because they're worse than you. And that's how it starts. And it's going to be a four book arc. I've got the first 2 done, but then I got sucked back into my Lovecraftian books, and now I'm writing a young adult novel, but whatever. That's the next one after the young adult novel's finished.
Okay. Now, Ron, question for you.
All right.
When you're structuring your novels, does any of it, how do I put it? Does any of the influence of any of the old historical books, do you see anything coming in? Whether it's in the characters, the style, the anything?
No, but I do have a book in the hopper, in the Cathaldi world. I want to go back, like 500 years in the past, and the working title would be Birth of Cathaldi, and I want the movement to mirror the Nazi party, creation and assumption of power. And so I've already built in a structure of a bunch of things that happen that are analogous to what really happened in real life, which is awesome because now my Netflix queue is full of Hitler and Nazi stuff. Like, every time I come up, I'm like, man, this looks bad. This looks like I am a nuthead for. Anyway, that's the only one that I've taken any external structure at all from.
Gotcha. Okay, Adam. Questions?
Yeah, I haven't really. I haven't really modeled the structure of my books on anything in particular. Historically, unless you want to say that it's the 3-act structure, you know, borrowing from stage. All of my books, except for the latest one, except for Triumph's Ashes, are divided into 3 sections, you know, and each section has a title which kind of gives you a hint as to what's going to be going on and the theme of that section. You know, so I tend to think of the, you know, it's Act 1, Act 2, Act 3, and then all the chapters in there are all the various scenes as I go through. But that's more a purely mechanical structure as opposed to, you know, some overarching, you know, thematic structure, which I haven't built into anything. But part of that is because of the way I write. I mean, I know where I want to end up.
Mhm.
And I have absolutely no idea how I'm going to get there. I find out as I write it. So, you know, it's just as much fun for me writing it as I hope for a reader to read it, because we're both discovering what's happening in the book.
Okay.
You know, I just happen to have a little power to change things around a little bit if I don't like the way they went.
Mm. Now, is there?
I was going to say, Stephen King said something about that, and I'm going to paraphrase it and probably butcher it, but he talked about our stories. They're like fossils in the ground. They already exist. And us as the writer, we're the paleontologist revealing it. And as we're writing, we're also amazed by what we're finding as we write. And I thought that was a great analogy. Now, I know there are some people that are, you know, plotters and have everything down right to the, I write like you. I kind of know where I have to get to, and I'm not sure how I'm going to get there. And sometimes I'm equally surprised by the end of the night when I sit down and go, wow.
Now, is there
the way I look at it is, as an author, you know, it might be our words, right, Troy? You know, it might be what we're putting on the screen, but it's not our story. It's our character's story.
Mhm.
They're telling us what's going on. They're telling us what's happening, and we're just the conduit.
Now, is there, my question to you that I wanted to pose, is there anything taboo, any specific subjects where when you sit down to write one of your novels, do you ever think, oh, I can't touch on that, or this wouldn't be a good thing, or is it kind of no holds bars and you just take the reins and run with it? Anthony, how about your next book, love?
Well, I can tell you for certain that my editor fixes a lot of my mistakes and things where I go a little too far. I have to say the first book would have probably been, may have possibly been erotic technically if I didn't have her reel it in for me a little bit. Not that that's a bad thing, but I just didn't want it to be that way. And I didn't realize, what do I know? I don't know. So yeah, so for me, like, you know, nothing is really off topic. I do it. I write it as I'm thinking and what's in my brain, and you know, and a lot of that comes from my my time in a previous life. I worked in a correctional facility for about 6 years, and I was on the management control unit with you know, it's what they consider the worst of the worst that society has to offer. So I would spend, you know, 10 hours a day there, and a lot of the interactions I had with, you know, any human interaction I had were with people who are multiple, you know, offenders of killers, rapists, cannibals, everything you can think of. So I've used a lot of that in from my experiences in the past in my writing. So I need someone who can reel me in and say, listen, you're going a little too far here. You got to bring it back. And I'm like, okay, thank you. You know, so that helps a little bit. But that never makes it to people's, you know, the general public's eyes, thankfully.
Mhm. Ron, now is there anything you won't write?
No. In You're as Stupid as You Are Fat, How to Talk to Women, there's a chapter about losing your virginity. And I'm pretty sure I wrote something along the lines of, if you're 30 years old, and this is for men, if you're 30-year-old male and you're still a virgin, you know, do whatever you have to. And I think it says something like, you know, fuck a fat chick or fuck a retard. So that's pretty extreme. My next book,
I don't feel so
Rape,
bad about
Rape,
my
Rape.
poem now.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was
No,
going
I
to say
don't
my next
know.
book, Rape,
Go to
Rape,
him
Rape.
first, so I know like where I can go. You got to go to him first next time, because so that I know what's allowed and what's not.
This is a nighttime program, just to let you guys know.
Yeah. Most of us are grown-ups.
Adam,
But no, nothing is off limits intentionally. I do want to talk a little bit about the last question, though. I have a scene in one of my fantasy novels where some young children are murdered in front of the main character's eyes, and he's unable to stop it. And I wrote it, and I was kind of shook. I was emotionally affected. And I went downstairs, and I told my wife, she's like, what's wrong? And I'm like, well, these two kids just got murdered, and it was really graphic. It was kind of gross. I feel awful. And she's like, well, why did you do that? Why, you didn't have to write that. And I'm like, that's just what happened. I mean, I can't do anything about it, you know, to get to Troy's Stephen King quote. Yeah, I was just revealing what took place. But
You
to
know-
reiterate, rape.
and I rate dark literature, and let me tell you, some of the things most of the things that I write, I find that people are like, wow. Like I had a friend of mine that he wouldn't talk to me for 2 weeks. He was like, I don't even know what to say. And he left. And I was like, okay. And then he ended up calling me and he said, I thought about it and I realized you really can't help what you write. It comes from your soul. And Ron, I definitely believe that whether we put it out to the public or not, sometimes I think that things definitely need to be written. You know, we need to let go of those devils, so to speak. Now, Troy.
Yes. I don't think anything's taboo. As long as it's not gratuitous.
Okay.
Right? If it comes naturally out of the story,
Mm-hmm.
it deserves to be there. If you're forcing it in there just for shock value, well, then you're just a lazy writer, right? So I don't think there's anything that should be off limits. Now, depending on your genre,
Mm-hmm.
right? If I'm writing a middle grade thing about kids on a school trip, it shouldn't devolve into, a gunfight with naked hooker vampires from outer space. Like that would just be kind of weird. But there's nothing wrong with the naked hooker vampires from outer space if that fits the story.
Yeah.
Dude, you're making me relive my my high school adventures.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know what to say to that, Matt, but
Things happen.
I-
Nobody really knows.
I think the use of language, graphic violence, graphic sex, if that's what the thing calls for. Again, you have to look at it, just as Anthony was saying. He wrote some stuff that his editor was like, oh God, no. Because the editor's looking at it from a perspective of what's going to sell in the genre. And are you now in a completely different genre? And I think that's your limitation. right? You can write it, but are people going to read it if it's what they're not expecting? And if it is incredibly graphic of whatever nature, you do limit your readership. If that's what you want to write, write it. Just, don't be surprised when it doesn't hit the US Times bestseller list. But then again, 50 Shades of Grey made it, so what do I know? Right?
Well, but 50 Shades of Grey is just more proof to your point. You don't bring a birthday cake to a funeral. It's not that anything's taboo. It's you write, you pick what you're writing and you write it. If you're doing 50 Shades of Grey and suddenly space vampires show up, well, yeah, that don't fit probably. But to your point, yeah, don't bring a birthday cake to a funeral.
I think that was kind of my point that I was getting at originally, is that my book was it's general science fiction, and all of a sudden I've got because I have multiple characters and multiple POVs that there's one chapter is a romance, one chapter is an erotic, it didn't make any sense, so I had to fix that.
Suddenly it's a porn parody of Star Trek.
Yeah.
I don't know. They could have met somewhere in a bar. Everyone. There happened to be a comet that hit. You don't know. You never know. Now, Adam, how do you feel about writing prose? Do you feel that your writing is prose? Like, do you write organically? Does it come organically? Or is it something that you have a lot of research that you have to kind of undertake before you dive right in?
I dive right in, and I will go as far as what I know will take me.
Mhm.
And when I need to, Google is my friend, and I will research, because I'm writing general science fiction as well. And so, with a little bit of a harder edge. So I want the stuff, when I put science in there, I want it to be, at least plausible. It doesn't have to be proven. If it was proven, it wouldn't be science fiction. But at least, something that people can extrapolate. Oh, okay, well, if we can do this, then we can probably do that. And if we can probably do that, then, these other three things are going to make sense. So, yeah, I, dive in, jump in, and see where it takes me and see where I go. And to the last point, Troy made a very good point. As long as what you're writing is germane to what you're writing, if it is moving the plot along, then it has a place. If it's not moving the plot along, if it's not developing characters, if it's not fulfilling some need of the story, then it shouldn't be in there. And it can be the most brilliant thing you ever wrote. I mean, I had to cut about 10 pages out of one of the books because it stalled the book. And it just everything's moving along and moving along and moving along, and I wrote those pages and everything stopped. So as much as I liked them, they had to go.
Okay. Yeah, in my case, it scared him and he got the feels really bad. And he said that when he likes reading things. The friend of mine liked to read things that were more on the romantic side, which kind of surprised me because I'm not a romance type of person. So we kind of flipped on that one. So that was pretty interesting. That's why I wanted to know, what everyone kind of thought. Now, Anthony.
Who, me?
Uh-huh. Have you
always go to me first.
have you heard any or gotten any kind of response from anyone that you worked with, sort of speak? You said that you had worked in a prison. So my curiosity is piqued.
You mean the response to this?
Mm-hmm. To you?
Yes, actually. Someone and I hate to say this, but someone I went to high school with, he wound up coming in there at one point when I worked there, and it was only a few years, and I wound up finding out that it wasn't for me, so I wound up leaving. But you know, he had worked there. Yeah, I'm sorry, he came in, and I didn't recognize him. Had no idea who he was. He knew who I was right away, and I didn't recognize him because he had full beard. You know, he was all disheveled, and I had no idea who he was. And I wound up finding out after the fact, you know, who he was, and it was such a fast thing that I didn't remember him. But he reached out to me a few weeks ago, and he offered to buy a lot of copies of my book. And I'm like, well, why are you going to do that? Like, you're wasting your money, man. Like, if you know, what's the point of that? It didn't really make any sense to me. And he goes, well, I've been very successful. And I thought to myself, well, I mean, you came through the jail, so I don't know how successfully, you know, I mean, you, and not that turns it off, but I'm just, you know, that was my thinking. Like, you know, I know you had some trouble. Like, how successful have you been? Like, I don't really understand. Like, you're offering to buy a lot of books to distribute them for me. And I didn't really fully understand what was going on. And then all of a sudden he said to me, well, I struck it big with Bitcoin when it first started. I spent a lot of money, and yeah, I'm a millionaire now. And I went, what? And I said, what? And I didn't believe him. And then I started looking, and I was like, wow. I looked at where he lives and what he's doing. And I'm like, oh my God, this guy is like, you know, he's rich, like, really. And I said, you know, you can't judge people. You really can't in life. Like, it's not the right thing to do. And it doesn't work out, because I was wrong. And he said he was reading it, and he liked it, and he thought it was really good. And you know, and he wound up helping me out, and he bought a lot of copies, and he said he was going to distribute them for me. And I thought that was really cool. And I said, you know, you can't judge a book by its cover.
Wow, what a twist of fate. That's crazy. I mean,
That would
good for
mean
him,
more.
but
That would mean more if you knew anything about books.
Yes, I don't know a thing about books, man. Ron, we're going out for a drink, you and me. We're gonna sit at a
That would be
bar,
fun.
and we're gonna hang
Ron's
out.
going to explain the whole writing process.
Well, no, I mean,
Ron,
I'm sure he's a great writer, but he's apparently not so great a reader. I'll explain
No,
reading
no.
to him.
You know,
That
in
way-
high school, I was always in those interior classrooms where it was really small. There's no windows, and it was like 3 desks. So that was always
Special
me.
education classes.
Yeah, yes, that was always me. I had a very tough time growing up, and yeah, so that's why I went through a lot of editors and proofreaders.
Gotcha.
Now, does anyone edit their own work? And
I do.
has anyone ever tried and had difficulty doing it? Ron?
I edit my own stuff.
Okay.
I don't really have a lot of trouble. I mean, I still use pro writing aid like Troy, because Troy's the best. But yeah, I do. Now that doesn't mean, well, I had one person, another author read my book, and they found one mistake, one typo. And they were like, well, I hope you're not offended by me telling you. I'm like, no, I want to know. And they only found one, and there may be more, but they're kind of a stickler, and they found one, so I was pretty happy. And although when Children of Cathaldi went to become an audiobook, and they went through it, I don't know what happened, but there was a scene or a chapter where they're like in an inn and they're talking, and then all of a sudden one of the characters is leaning down from their saddle. So obviously during the editing, something changed in this chapter, but not all of it. And so they contacted me, and they're like, maybe you should fix this one paragraph that doesn't make any sense, because the guy was on a horse all of a sudden in a bar. But all in all, I'm pretty pleased with it, and I've had some compliments about the editing. So from people who didn't know I did it myself.
Troy?
I also did it myself, and I'm aware you probably should get an editor to do it, but honestly, for most self-published authors, I think the only thing we're doing is keeping editors and cover designers in business, because they get paid and you wait for the royalties to come in. And I've got books that I did go and get a professional cover, and I did go get an editor to look at it. And so far, the only person that's made any money off of it is the editor and the cover designer. Whereas the stuff that I went and did seemed to sell okay. So it's, Matt, judge my first stuff. Unstable internet connection here on me. My first stuff, I look back now because my editing is definitely improved. I've gotten better at it, and I look at it now and I'm like, oh, and I've had the odd person go, oh, it was poorly edited, and they weren't wrong. Because when I anytime I see that, I go back and I try to look at it and go, yeah, okay, maybe you're being a real stickler for it. Because generally, I mean, there's 184 reviews or ratings on it, and then 80 some odd % are 4 stars and higher. So clearly the majority of people like it. The few sticklers that are like, oh, it's this. One guy was mad that I used semicolons. Like, whatever, guy, like that's your takeaway. He goes, he wrote a very good story and I liked the way he paced it all in characterization, but semicolons, oh my God, like 1 star. Like, okay, get over yourself.
But those same people, that's the thing though, those same people, when you self-publish, when you're just getting into it, when you're doing that Kindle Direct Publishing or the Create Space or the whatever everybody was doing when they started, it's you don't know what you don't know. And what people will sit there and they'll shoot down the stuff that you misspelled, they'll shoot down the grammatical errors because you can't see your own errors 90% of the time. But at the same time, what they don't realize is you had to learn and teach yourself how to get to that point to begin with. It's easy to sit in the stands and condemn that quarterback, but to be on the field when he's learning how to take a tackle, that's an entirely different thing.
I agree.
Ron, you're out.
That was a good one.
I like Matt better now.
Yep.
And
Oh, no.
Yeah. Good for you,
now,
Matt.
granted, there are a lot of indie authors out there that really shouldn't be indie authors, and that's some
But
people
how many
really-
of them just didn't know what they didn't know? At the same time, we still have to applaud their effort for getting as far as they did.
Hey, you know what? Anybody that takes the time to do this and try to do it should be applauded. At the very least, you completed a task and you got it out there and you followed your dream. It may
You
not be
completed a task. That is
Well,
But
I
the,
mean,
the
there
other
are so
side of
many
this, though,
people
the
that-
other side of this, and to your point that there are some out there that still look pretty, the best thing about self-publishing when you're first getting started is you can take that book when somebody says, oh, this sucked, this was written wrong, and you can fix it and you can re-upload it.
Yep.
The ones that don't are the ones that are like, oh, I did it, I'm good. And that's the quarterback who showed up to practice 3 or 4 times and then never made it to the game.
you know what? I think I made a reference to one of the moons. It was either Jupiter's or Saturn. I got it wrong. For whatever reason, I said Jupiter's moon was around Saturn or whatever. And the person said, I'm taking a point away because apparently the author didn't know that. And he was right. And I quickly went back and changed it and went, well, I don't know what this guy's talking about. I got it right. Read it now. It says it. It's correct.
My first draft of the Trials of Obed Marsh, man, I accidentally called an entire East Coast, like Rhode Island area, all as Catholic instead of Protestant. It was one line, and the 3 of the reviews came out saying this guy doesn't know anything about religion, didn't know how to do research at all, blah blah blah. I'm like, okay, upload the new version.
Yeah, then they look like idiots. Right?
Exactly. What are they talking about?
They got it right. What are you talking about? Yeah.
Now, how many are all of you on Kindle? I'm seeing head
Yeah.
shaking. Is that a yes?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
Okay.
Most of my stuff is
Yeah.
the Kindle. I have one book that's not in Kindle Unlimited, and I took it wide,
Mhm.
and I think I've sold 2 copies wide. So I'm like, I probably should bring it back into Kindle Unlimited just because when you're advertising, it's easy just to point it to there, and still 70% of the sales are going through Amazon. And I know there are other people that are like, oh, why would you want to put all your eggs in the Amazon basket? And oh, I don't want to be controlled by Amazon. And it's like, well, good for you, but Amazon's doing
The
great
model
for
is
you.
different for everybody. It works for certain genres. It works if you promote different things. If it works for you, keep doing it. I've never gotten it to work for me, but that's not from lack of trying. And so I use a different model. But we all end up on Amazon and everywhere else you can put your books because it's the only way to do things.
Matt, when are you
I mean-
starting your classes? Because I'm signing up.
I
right
actually
now.
used to teach classes called self-publishing without spending money.
Really? There you go.
Yeah, I toured all of Iowa and I did classes all over the state.
I can tell by the way you're coming across with that. You know,
I'm a
you're
couple years removed, but I'm all of a sudden back in the zone. It's like, yes.
For me, as long as 30 to 35% of my revenue is coming from Kindle Unlimited, it's going to stay there. When everybody that's on Kindle
Yep.
Unlimited has read my stuff and that starts to drop off, well, let's go wide with it now. But it's really hard to take the risk to throw away 30% of your revenue to start from scratch in a brand new channel.
Well, and 30% is a huge number. A good
Yeah.
example of it failing is my book Broken Nights was only on Amazon Kindle Unlimited, and I was making $1.10 a month, and that was with little cent increments. Whereas if one book had been sold, I'd have been making $2 off of it.
Yeah.
So after I gave it a quarter to see if it ramped up, and then I gave it another quarter because I honestly asking the guy who was running it for me to fix it was a little bit of an effort. But I gave it that time. And then once I saw it wasn't getting higher than $1.10, there was one month that was 70 cents. I'm like, okay. I mean, that's the other side of it. You've got to be able to, it works for you. Why would you give up 30% of your income? That's silly.
Yeah.
Me, it wasn't even making up 1% of mine.
Well, and this is my my fantasy book and my sci-fi books. They have, I mean, the reviews I've gotten are good.
Mm.
People like it. I find that it's such a congested channel. It's hard to get noticed in. My horror stuff, there's a built-in audience, and it was easy to connect with people on that, and that just went through the roof. So I'm like, yeah, I really should finish that sci-fi 4-book series. I really should write more about the fantasy novel. I just had a review yesterday that said, somebody was saying, oh my God, I love these characters. I love the way he did it. I really want to see what happens next. And I'm like, I guess I better go back to that series. But it's hard to do that for the one that sells 4 copies a month when your other stuff is selling 14 and 15 copies a day. You're kind of like, I probably should go buy the 14, 15 copies a day one and not the one that does 4 a month. Right? So
the projections are very important as far as leading you on which way to go. Troy, how long have you been doing this?
the very first thing I published, the one out of this, it came from the seed. The first story came out in April 2019.
Okay.
The first time I started to sit down to write anything was about, I think it was May 2018. And that was that Jimmy Mayfield book I talked about earlier. I was in Florida. I went for a walk where my parents have a summer home or winter home. And they just put in sidewalks in the sprawl of southwestern Florida. Nobody had sidewalks. Nobody walks anywhere. So I decided to go for a walk. Well, I didn't bring in a hat, no sunscreen, no water. An hour and a half later, I'm delirious and sunburnt. And I came back and I'm like, I want to be a writer. And I had this story. And I came back from Florida. That was basically it. It was nuts. I think I had sunstroke. And the whole story was there in my head. And I came back and I was talking to my staff because I run a not-for-profit organization here. And I sat down, I'm telling them the story, and one of my staff, who's always giving me grief, says, when are you going to stop telling us about these stupid stories and start writing them? So I wrote it just to spite her, just so I could say, there, I did it. Ha. And that's how I got started. So I haven't been doing this very long at all.
Adam, how about you?
The first thing I put up for Kindle Unlimited was a couple of Sherlock Holmes stories, a couple of Sherlock Holmes pastiches, which I wrote back in 2010. Yeah, 2010. And the oldest work that I have up there is something that I completed. I've edited it and re-edited. I have a cat tapping on my arm wanting fuss. I've re-edited and rewritten it a few times, but It's a vampire and time travel story that I finished for the first time back in '94, and that's up there. That's up there as well because it's a fun little, it's a nice little story, and the longer I go, the more polished it gets. I finally got happy with it last year, saying, okay, this is its final form, and went and got a narrator and had it done as an audiobook. So now it's kind of fixed. There won't be too many more, there won't be any radical changes to that one.
All right. Ron?
What?
Hi.
Hi, Ron.
Hi. How
Where have you
long?
been?
Is that what we were talking? I don't know. I I was thinking about stuff.
I can tell.
Well, I mean, I started writing when I was in junior high, I guess. In high school, I wrote short stories. I wrote a translation of the Bible called The Book of Ron. Started my own religion. I thought it was
How'd that go?
hilarious. It turns out it's very offensive to people who believe seriously. All right, this is really awful, but I used to wear, I found this gigantic crucifix necklace at an antique store. I mean, it was, maybe 5 inches tall, and I would wear that around, and I was pretty upfront about my lack of belief. And this one friend of mine, who happened to be a Mormon, came up to me and he's like, "Hey, what are you wearing that crucifix for when you don't believe, aren't a Christian?" And I said, "Well, I'm a big supporter of capital punishment, and I think Jesus got just what was coming to him, fucking heretic." And he laughed, and he's like, "God, that's so awful. I mean, you're going to hell, and I feel bad for you, but it is still funny." And that was kind of the reaction I got. You're going to hell, but it's kind of funny. So
I'm going to hell with you for laughing.
yeah. But so I started writing in high school, and even the first book, Children of Cathaldi, I wrote it around the same time Adam wrote the one he was on. In the mid '90s, I wrote the first draft, and I didn't like it. It was third person, and it was fine. I liked the story, but I thought the book itself was a little boring. I mean, it was bland. I didn't love it. I liked it, but I didn't love it. And so I rewrote it a couple of years ago in first person with making a different character the main character. And he has a little more personality than his goody buddy. So, okay, maybe a lot more personality. And then I did love it. So, long time. I haven't been publishing for a long time, but I've been writing for a long time.
Gotcha. Matt?
I've been writing my whole life since I knew how to pick up a pencil. It was as soon as my mom she showed me her electric typewriter, I started writing what I didn't know at the time was fan fiction for Star Wars. And then when I got to college, I would write fake adventures for my friends. Whenever we'd go out partying or something, we'd come back with a story and I would fictionalize it and make it a blast. And I didn't actually start publishing until 2010 with my first novel, Random Stranger. It's that urban fantasy I mentioned earlier. And then after that, it was the formula of NaNoWriMo, National Novel Writing Month. A certain number of words a day in a month, you've got a novel. And once I realized that I could put down that kind of effort, it became a little easier for me. So then book 2 came out. Then I remembered how much I love Lovecraft, and I just dove right into Lovecraft. Then my brother wanted to write a superhero story, so I did a superhero novel, and then I went back to Lovecraft. So I mean, it's 2010 is when I started, and I haven't stopped.
Okay. Anthony?
I'm going to be honest with you. When I joined this Zoom tonight, I thought that I was in a Furries Anonymous group where, people who dress up in those costumes and do little wacky things on the side. So that's what I thought this was. And I'm just winging it right now. I have no idea what's going on.
We are. We are in that group.
Well, Ron, do a dance. Troy, everybody get up and start dancing.
I'm just kidding. So actually, I can say this, and I didn't know this was like not, I'm not gonna say a big deal, but that this was like meant something. I first got, obviously from my wife when we opened up the box, but I started researching on, on the internet, Reddit and, Quora and different places like that. And I actually was able to get a hold of Mercedes Lackey. We were going back and forth, her and I talking, and all I saw was her bio that said she had published, she was a New York Times bestseller, and she had published 135 books. And I was like, okay, well, let me ask her questions. And I was originally looking at possibly hiring a ghostwriter to take all the crap that I had and putting it together. And she spent hours talking to me and said, do it yourself, write it, just do it. It doesn't matter. Just write it. Who cares? You're going to regret it for the rest of your life if you don't. And so I put a special tribute in my book to her, thanking her for that. And I only found out after the fact from talking to people who actually read books that she's somebody pretty big in the community, and it's a big deal that I got to even talk to her, and I didn't know that. What the hell do I know? That's probably why she talked to me, because I just thought she was a regular person.
Awesome.
So yeah, it was her
Yeah,
that
those
really got me to do it. I'm sorry.
Those connections can make all the difference, can't they?
Yeah,
And just not knowing you can't ask.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that's it, 100%. And I'm talking to her, and she, she was the one that really convinced me to do it myself. And then I started doing it, and she definitely backed off after that. I get it. She's a professional, and once she knew I was doing what I was doing, and but if I reach out, she does answer, and I think that's pretty cool. And I'm still talking to her a little bit, but that she was the one who convinced me to do it, and I just started going, and then I went from there, and that was it.
Have you ever thought about thanking her by reading one of her books?
Yeah, what? You and I, what? After this is done, let's go on a Zoom together. Just you and me. Let's talk. I told you, I thought this was a furry meeting tonight.
Yeah, I've never actually heard an author say, I don't actually read books, but
Yeah, never
I
done it.
mean, saying
that's a first.
thinking
Yeah,
it's
me
a furry
too.
meeting is just as much a fail. Where's your outfit?
It's actually right over here on the floor. When I saw you guys
okay.
didn't have one, I took it off real quick. I said, crap, this is the wrong meeting.
Hmm.
Well, I dressed for it. Thank you. I always have
There you go.
something going on. Everyone, I have had an awesome time. And I thank you all for joining us.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you
Oh,
guys.
definitely. Anytime.
Yes, great to be back.
Awesome. Everyone, I hope that we have been able to help you on your journey. And I truly, truly think if anyone needs to get in touch with anyone, please get in touch with me, and I can connect you with Adam, Anthony, Troy, Ron, and Matt. But I'm going to let each one of them tell you how you can contact them directly. Matt.
You can follow me on my blog, author Matthew Davenport at wordpress.com, or just find me on Amazon. I'm also on Twitter at Spazenport.
Awesome. Ron?
I would say go to my website, cathaldi.com, KATHALDI.com, and then it's got all my shit up there.
And remember, it's La.
It's Ron La.
Run la.
Troy.
You can find me on Twitter, which I'm barely on, so don't go to Twitter, but at Florida Novel, because of that, Florida walk in the thing that made me crazy. I also have FloridaManTheNovel.com, but I think it needs to be updated. So the best place is Facebook. I have my 2 Facebook groups. I've got Troy Young Author, so at Troy Young Author, and also The Other Lovecraft. Not that I think I'm the other Lovecraft, but it's The Other, the name of the series, right? And it's Lovecraftian, and it was entirely unintentional, but it seems that I've got delusions of grandeur, so it's not. But at The Other Lovecraft on Facebook is where you'll find my stuff.
Okay. Anthony?
I would just go to anthonyalmato.com. My name, anthonyalmato.com. I have a lore page there too with all the world building for my story. So it's pretty cool. A lot of pictures, a lot of details on characters, but it'll spoil the book a little bit for you. But if you don't read books, it's good. Just go there.
Adam?
Sure. You can find me on Facebook and Instagram, just Adam Gaffin, easy enough. And you can also go to my website, CassidyChronicles.com, where you can find chapters, you can find samples of the audiobooks, you can find links to get free books, links to author interviews. Troy has done an author interview, I think it was back in March of this year. And so go look him up. Go read what he had to say back then about his books. And yeah, love to hear from anybody.
All righty. And I am Opus Night, and this has been Night Vision. And I thank you all dearly. I've had a great time, guys.
Thanks.
Thank
Talk
you.
soon.
Me too. Thank you.
You're very welcome all.
Thank you.
Bye-bye now.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.